Would you believe me if I said that this console is older than I am? I wouldn't either. Hey kids, welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. Now, you have decided to take your first steps into collecting retro video games and consoles, and so you've picked up an Atari 2600 all on your own. But now that you have this beast of a console, you can't quite figure out how to connect it to your TV. You see, this little cord coming out the back of it, you can't figure out how to make pictures on your television. And so you're kind of stumped. Now, if you were lucky, your Atari came with one of these little switch box thingies, and unfortunately, you can't figure out how to make this thing work either. Well, you see, back in the day, this little thing is how you would connect your Atari's cord to the television. You would take these two little pronged forks here on the end and manually screw them into the back of your television. But most TVs these days don't have any way for you to actually connect these forks to the system. So you're stuck yet again, even if you have the little switch box. So what do? Well, believe it or not, the solution is actually quite simple. You see, you go online and you pick up one of these little guys. It's called an RCA female to RF male adapter. You take this, screw it into the coaxial input on the back of your television set, hook your Atari cord up to this bad boy, and in no time at all, you're playing Yar's Revenge. Now that we've got it working, let's talk about the 2600 for a bit. You see, this is one of the most classic video game consoles on the market that you can pick up today. The Atari 2600 was first released back in 1977, and it was, while not the first home console to use video game cartridges, it did popularize it as something for the entire family to enjoy. And because of how popular the Atari 2600 was, it actually had market dominance for years. This thing was ridiculously popular and had so many games produced for it, not just by Atari themselves, but by all sorts of third-party publishers. In fact, the sheer volume of third-party games being shoveled onto the Atari 2600, shovelware, if you would, there eventually became this kind of glut in the market. And while the 2600 was around until 1992, I want to say was when they stopped producing them, it kind of lost a lot of its popularity in 1982, about 5 years after it first hit the market, in what has become known as the Great Video Game Crash of the 80s. And while people like to attribute this video game crash to E.T. for the Atari, in truth, it was a bunch of factors kind of coming together in this perfect storm almost of negativity. There was E.T. and its poor reception, yes, but there was also the home adaptation of Pac-Man, as well as said previously, the sheer volume of really low-effort shovelware made by third-party publishers. The Atari was an absolute beast of its age, and it did have quite a bit of competition, but even with the competition, and with the video game crash of 83, I might have said 82 earlier, my mistake if I did, even with those factors, this little box is an absolute unit, and it has some of the most iconic games of the age released for it, such as Adventure, which is maybe not in the top 10 video games of all time, but it was definitely memorable for the time. And I think nowadays it's fondly remembered alongside things like Pitfall. And just such a good game, really. If you've never given it a try, I highly recommend it. Another thing to note about the 2600 is that it's a very robust machine. It's very simple. There's not a lot of high-end specs going on with its hardware, but that simplicity, that solid design, has allowed it to endure decades after its release. In fact, the box I have hooked up now, I've now owned for almost 15 years, and I have never and I say this quite seriously, never had to do any maintenance on it. I can just plug it in, hook it up, and it's good to go. That shows you how well built these little boxes were. You know, there's something to be said about these little cartridges that even now, decades after their initial release, they're still working just fine. That is some serious A-game design, that it can just work. Man, how many video game consoles released today do you still think will be working just fine 10, 20, 30 years from now? Not many, if I had to guess, but the Atari, as long as it hasn't rusted apart, I think these little guys are going to be working just fine long after I'm gone. That's really all I've got to say today, kids. The Atari really is just an amazing piece of hardware, and it's, in my opinion, one of the first consoles you should consider collecting if you want to get into retro video games. Now, I know that the games released for it aren't the most spectacular shows ever. They're not crazy high-end. It's not The Legend of Zelda or Mario or Sonic or a lot of the other fancier retro games people are hyped about. But still, the Atari is a beautiful piece of art. And a lot of the games released for it, even though they're not the most advanced things in the world, are still pretty cool pieces of video game history and are worth collecting. But hey, what do you kids think? Do you have a favored retro game console? If so, let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, all that jazz. And remember, your uncle needs to get healthy, so for every like this video gets, I'll be doing a push-up in the next one. I died. My previous video only got 14 likes. Come on, guys. I'm not going to lose any weight like this. Whew, that's 14.